investigate President Biden's handling of classified information. President Biden's lawyer says he's confident the investigation will show the documents were, quote, inadvertently misplaced. Well, our next guest knows what it is like to lead a White House with the president under investigation. Before he served as CIA director and defense secretary, Leon Panetta was chief of staff to then-President Bill Clinton. During that time, President Clinton was investigated multiple times. Welcome back to All Things Considered, Mr. Secretary.
Good to be with you.
So you have been on all sides of this, handling classified information at the White House, at the CIA. Was it inevitable that a special counsel would be appointed, do you think, once yet another batch of documents was discovered?
I don't think there was any question but that when a second group of documents was discovered, that ultimately there would have to be a special counsel to do the investigation. This is obviously an embarrassment for the White House, but ultimately it too has to be investigated, and probably the best way to investigate it is with a special counsel.
You called it an embarrassment. Is it also damaging for President Biden? Whatever the special counsel eventually finds, just politically, this is a president who appears to be getting ready to mount another campaign for president.
Well, there's no question that it's both an embarrassment and damaging to the credibility of the White House, because obviously the president has criticized former President Trump and the way he handled classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. I don't think there's any question that these issues have to be investigated, but what all of this is pointing out is a much bigger problem with regards to both the labeling and handling of classified material. I think there's a very serious problem involved with regards to how those documents are in fact followed, and how they are protected, and how they are filed in the White House. And so I think there's a lot of issues here that are going to have to be looked at.
You're making the point that perhaps one of the reasons why classified documents keep turning up in places where they shouldn't is that too many documents are classified in the first place?
Well, there's a combined problem here. I think one is whether or not we overclassify certain documents. I mean, that's been an issue that's been criticized for a long time, and I think there's some validity to that. But the second one is, how are classified documents in fact handled? Normally, my understanding when I was both chief of staff and director of the CIA is that you document these classified documents, you make sure that they are protected in a secure area, you require that those documents be returned to that area, and obviously that system has broken down.
Speak to the parallels between these situations, because you nodded to the fact that President Biden's predecessor, former President Trump, has also been investigated. How different is this? How similar is this to the Mar-a-Lago documents?
Well, it's obvious that in the President Trump situation, I think he was generally not very careful or responsible with regards to classified documents. I mean, I think there's a history here that he didn't pay a lot of attention to classification, that he threw these documents around, put them in boxes, and generally just did not handle them well. I would assume that with President Biden, there was at least a sense of concern about making sure that documents like this are in fact handled properly. But it's also clear that for some reason this did not happen in this case, and I think staff probably bears some responsibility in both situations for what happened.
Before I let you go, I wonder if you're obviously not at the White House. We've tracked you down today in California. But what is it like to be working inside the White House on the day that a special counsel to investigate the president is named?
Frankly, it just provides an added burden to a place where you're constantly handling crisis after crisis to begin with.
We've been speaking with Leon Panetta, who has served in multiple roles in multiple administrations, including as White House Chief of Staff, CIA Director, and Secretary of Defense. Secretary Panetta, thank you.
Good to be with you.
The annual United Nations Climate Conference will be in the United Arab Emirates late this year. The UAE is a major oil producer, but it's also a place battling extreme heat. Today, it upset environmentalists by appointing the head of the country's main state oil company to lead the negotiations at COP28. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports from Dubai.
Environmental activist group Greenpeace says it's deeply alarmed by the UAE's appointment of Sultan Al Jaber to lead this November's Global Climate Conference. Other environmentalists called it a breathtaking conflict of interest and a slap in the face to those suffering from man-made climate disasters. Al Jaber is head of Abu Dhabi's state-owned oil firm ADNOC, but the announcement of his appointment noted at length his background overseeing clean energy projects and his past experience as the UAE's climate change envoy. He's also helping funnel billions of dollars in government investments in carbon capture technologies and energy efficiency projects. But oil is key to the UAE's economy, allowing its unelected leadership to provide citizens with massive perks, develop the country, and expand influence abroad. And Gulf Arab states argue the world still runs on fossil fuels, energy sources that billions of people rely on for their existence. Here's how Al Jaber himself put it last year at an energy forum in Dubai.
We cannot and must not unplug the current energy system before we have built the new one.
He says even the US and Europe are acknowledging this.
Transitions, by definition, take time, and this one will take time.
But scientists caution countries need to cut carbon emissions now to slow global warming. The International Energy Agency says there should be no new investments in coal plants or oil and gas. Instead, they've called for a massive deployment in clean energy technologies. Al Jaber disagrees. Here he is again in remarks last year.
Let's create a clear roadmap that is based on real and solid foundations. Let's adopt policies that strengthen the stability of energy markets. Let's continue to invest in new and future energies. But let's not defund the current energy system.
While the UAE needs oil, there's also a realization here that the long summers are getting even hotter. It's so dangerous to work outside midday during some months that the government has outlawed it. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Mary Louise Kelly in Washington. I'm Tom Crane in the Twin Cities. Thanks for joining us for All Things Considered here on NPR News on Thursday afternoon, 12th afternoon, year 2023. Enrollment in the Affordable Care Act continues until the deadline Sunday. We get an update on that, and California is moving ahead with plans there to dismantle America's largest death row system. Those stories and more as we continue with All Things Considered from NPR News.
Programming supported by the Great Northern Festival, celebrating winter culture in the North with more than 60 events, January 25th through February 5th. More information at thegreatnorthernfestival.com. The Great Northern, let the climate change you.
Support comes from the Sunday series at House of Hope Presbyterian Church in St. Paul, featuring Heather McGee, author of The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together, this Sunday at 2 p.m. Programming is supported by Comcast Business, committed to helping businesses stay connected with the Comcast Business Complete Connectivity Solution. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply.
Northrop Auditorium on the University of Minnesota's Twin Cities campus is closed after part of the roof collapsed overnight on the historic building. The venue's website said a small section of the roof of the building fell in. No reports of any injuries. We have more online at nprnews.org. And if you're a regular listener to Minnesota Now, you might recall they check in back in the fall with some incoming first-year students, freshmen in college. They've checked back in with them as school reconvenes, and you can find out more, see and hear what they say about college life at nprnews.org.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Dataiku, a platform for everyday AI to help organizations make AI part of their daily business. Designed to elevate people, teams, and companies. DATAIKU.com. And from Easy Cater, committed to helping companies from nonprofits to the Fortune 500 find food for meetings and team lunches. Tax-exempt ordering and delivery nationwide at easycater.com.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. For a second straight year, enrollment in ACA, Affordable Care Act, marketplaces set a record. Nearly 16 million people have enrolled, and in most places, people can still sign up till Sunday. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin explains why these health insurance plans got more popular.
First of all, the plans are cheaper for people than they used to be. The government has pumped billions of dollars into subsidies to keep costs down for consumers. Another reason why more people are signing up, there's more help.
This year we really caught our stride.
That's Katie Waters Turner. She runs the Family Healthcare Foundation, which is part of the Tampa Bay Navigator Project in Florida. Navigators help people understand their options, decide on a plan, and get signed up for it all for free. They're paid through government grants. The Trump administration slashed funding for Navigators. The Biden administration shored it up. The Tampa Bay Navigator Project went from having a team of 16 navigators to this year having 35.
So we've been really able to spread out the need and the demand amongst those navigators.
One of the people her organization helped recently was Erin Dimmick. She and her husband Tyler are 30 years old. They live in Plant City, Florida, and right now she is, as she puts it, very pregnant. She's due with her first child in February.
My husband got a job offer, and that puts him in a 9-day insurance gap, and we were doing 60 days.
They couldn't afford to keep paying for the insurance he'd had through his old job. Cobra was going to cost them $1,600 a month, and that plan had been expensive for them anyway. She Googled her way to healthcare.gov, the federal insurance marketplace, which Florida and lots of other states use, and she started to answer questions like size of household, income.
Once you click your driving button, it asks you all sorts of confusing questions. I was absolutely in over my head. So, went to the Find Help place.
Localhelp.healthcare.gov has a directory to find navigators in your area. Erin found a local community center on the list and called them.
I called and they were like, well, George comes in on Thursday.
So the Dimmigs went to see George Masson. She was so stressed she would be uninsured when she went into labor.
But then he found me the plan and then told me all of the things, and I realized how much money it was going to save us. I cried in his office. I cried when we found out that we were going to be saving a lot of money.
She estimates it's going to save them $9,000 compared to their old plan. They're not done with health insurance. After the baby's born, they'll need to add the baby to their plan, decide whether to sign up for her husband's new employer-based plan when he becomes eligible.
George said that he would help walk us through that.
So she's not worried. Waters Turner says the Dimmigs aren't alone.
People have been really pleased with the cost of the insurance plans and the options that they have.
Federal health officials say 4 out of 5 enrollees qualify for plans that cost $10 or less per month. And 5 million people who are uninsured qualify for $0 premium plans. Enrollment is still open on the Federal Health Exchange, healthcare.gov, and in most state marketplaces until Sunday, January 15th. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News.
California this week is moving ahead with efforts to dismantle the largest death row system in America. Under Governor Gavin Newsom, the state on Wednesday began the process of permanently moving condemned inmates, all 671 of them, into the general prison population. NPR's Eric Westervelt has our story, and just as a warning, this piece contains a graphic description of violent crime.
Technically, the death penalty still exists in California. Prosecutors can still seek it. But no one's been put to death in the state in 17 years. And in 2019, Governor Newsom, a Democrat, imposed a moratorium on executions, and he closed the death chamber at San Quentin, the decrepit and still heavily used 19th century prison overlooking San Francisco Bay. Not long after, the state launched a pilot program that voluntarily moved 101 condemned inmates off death row. This week, the state moved to make that voluntary depopulation mandatory and permanent. It's in keeping with Newsom's long-held belief, here speaking on the issue last year, that who gets sentenced to death in America has little connection to justice.
That's a hell of a thing. The prospect of you ending up on death row has more to do with your wealth and race than it does your guilt or innocence. Think about that for a second. We talk about justice. We preach justice. But as a nation, we don't practice it on death row.
After a 45-day public comment period, more death row prisoners will soon start to join regular inmates in 7 other prisons in the state with maximum security units. No one will be resentenced in the moves, the Corrections Department says. Most will now be able to work in prison as clerks, laundry, or kitchen helpers, with 70% of their pay going to victim restitution. Anti-capital punishment groups are elated. The state with the largest condemned population is in effect moving to join the 23 other states that have abolished their death rows.
I'm thrilled. Gavin Newsom is doing a very smart thing and a very positive thing.
That's actor Mike Farrell, who chairs the group Death Penalty Focus. Farrell calls capital punishment unjust, barbaric, and biased against people of color. While he supports the move, he notes that many death row inmates face serious psychological hurdles.
It's going to be very difficult. There are many people on death row with serious mental issues, and many of them have been in solitary for decades. I think it's a very good move on his part. I just think that it has to be done extraordinarily carefully and very humanely.
In recent years, governors in Pennsylvania and Oregon have also imposed moratoriums on the death penalty. In part, California's reforms grew out of passage of 2016's Prop 66, which promised to speed up the time between a death sentence and an execution. As part of that voter-approved measure, the condemned could be moved off death row and into other prisons and required to work. Now, death penalty proponents accuse Governor Newsom of exploiting that lesser-known section of Prop 66 for political gain. Michael Rushford is president of the conservative Criminal Justice Legal Foundation.
The governor's taken loopholes and nuances in the law and used them to give criminals, the worst criminals, a break. Is unjust, it's unfair, it's stupid.
Some victims' families, too, are outraged. Sandra Friend's 8-year-old son, Michael Lyons, was making his way home from school in Yuba City, California in 1996 when he was abducted and brutalized by serial killer Robert Boyd Rhodes, who dumped the child's body in a riverbed. Friend says she now feels victimized all over again.
He tortured Michael for 10 hours. He stabbed him 70 to 80 times. And he was 8 years old. Just a little boy, full of life, full of dreams. To hear this news is devastating.
Friend says it's outrageous that killers like Rhodes may, in her words, get rewarded with expanded work options, maybe even a cellmate.
For him to be able to leave death row and go into a cushier prison, having maybe possibly a cellie, having a job, is terrifying because he is the worst of the worst. He is a monster.
Permanently emptying California's death row, 650 men at San Quentin and 21 women at a separate facility, is expected to take much of this year. Perhaps the only thing Friend and Farrell agree on is that the process should be methodical and careful, as the Department of Corrections pledges it will be. Eric Westervelt, NPR News, San Francisco.
And this is NPR News.
Are you connected to your local arts community here in Minnesota? NPR News is on the hunt for art hounds. These are people we turn to recommend upcoming concerts, performances, exhibitions, and more. We'd love to hear from you, particularly if you live in Greater Minnesota. Get in touch at nprnews.org/arthounds. That's nprnews.org/arthounds.
We're at 22 in the Twin Cities right now at NPR News 91.1. Stiff wind out there giving us a wind chill of 10. Overnight, our temperature will be 10 by tomorrow morning. It'll be partly cloudy. Tomorrow, a sunny Friday. Friday already with a high in the low 20s. And then a low around 12 Friday night, Saturday morning. Saturday, warmer, lower 30s, upper 30s on Sunday and Monday. Maybe a run at 40 degrees. Right now at 91.1 KNOW, it's 22. A large tornado tore through Selma, Alabama today, caused extensive damage. More on that coming up. Then more than 4,000 migrants have arrived in Denver over the last month. That's prompting the city to declare a state of emergency. Now the mayor wants to close the shelters that house them. And MIT Technology Review has released its annual list of breakthrough technologies. You'll hear from an editor who helped put the list together. Paul Hutner has the forecast. But first, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special counsel to investigate the discovery of classified documents at President Biden's Delaware home and in his former office. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports Garland says the extraordinary circumstances require the move.
Special Counsel Robert Hur will start work in the coming days. Hur's a former Justice Department official in the Trump administration. He also served as the top federal prosecutor in Maryland. Hur will probe the possible unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or other records at Biden's think tank office and at his Wilmington, Delaware home. In a written statement, Hur promised to exercise fair, impartial, and independent judgment. Another special counsel, Jack Smith, is leading a separate probe of government secrets found at former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
Annual inflation eased last month to its lowest level in more than a year. NPR's Scott Horsley reports on a new cost of living index from the Labor Department.
Consumer prices in December were up 6.5% from a year ago. That's a smaller annual increase than the month before and a significant drop from last summer when inflation hit a 4-decade high of just over 9%. The price index actually declined slightly between November and December thanks to a big drop in gasoline prices. President Biden says while inflation's still too high, it's moving in the right direction.
It all adds up to a real break for consumers, real breathing room for families, and more proof that my economic plan is working.
Inflation